Welcome back to Book Talk with Kara. This is another episode of our special season where I'm taking you behind the scenes into my books and really giving you the story behind the story of why I wrote them and a little bit of, you can think of it as this is the audio or video author notes. So every story has a story. There's a reason why I would invest uh, up to 2 years of my life into the research, the writing, the editing again, and then the marketing of these stories. And so today I want to tell you a little bit about Delayed Justice, which is technically the third book in the Hidden Justice series. And I'm saying technically because I intentionally wrote this series in a way that you could pick up any one of them, or you can skip one, and it's not going to impact your ability to enjoy the books. And readers have told me that like they would pick up Delayed Justice and not realize Beyond Justice and Imperfect Justice were before it, and vice versa. So you can really read them in any order at all. But if you enjoy the idea of kind of following along and seeing characters reappear, then you can definitely read them in an order, but it's not required. But the good news with the Hidden Justice series is all of the books are out now. So you can binge them and just kind of sit there and inhale them, especially as the weather gets cold and all of that. I just adored this cover. I think the cover is masterful because it's the blue and the yellow and the woman running. And man, this is a woman in jeopardy story if ever I have written one. So there's a couple of things I want to tell you about this one. Number one, this one I intentionally wrote essentially with a trigger warning because this book is not going to be for everybody. And the reason is this one deals with childhood sexual abuse. And so I want you to know that up front. I also want you to know up front that I did my absolute best to treat this issue and those who have experienced it with the utmost respect. I had several different people read it to make sure I was telling the story in a way that was so honoring and just really try to respect the journey that people who have lived this walk. Um, it was not easy. It was so hard to write this book. It was one of those I really was like, man, I don't necessarily, I wouldn't have chosen, honestly, to write this one. But I knew from book one that Jamie's story was dark, but I didn't know really how dark it was. It's one of those, it's always interesting when you're writing a series and you've got these recurring characters that normally book one, like when I'm writing the proposal, I know that character because I've written at least the first 3 or 4 chapters. I've written about 50 pages before it's purchased by a publisher. So I really know that heroine pretty well. And then in this one, because the heroines were all going to be attorneys, I spent a lot of time on the front end really working through what type of, honestly, like archetypes they were. So kind of working through like Greek goddesses, because those are just the archetypes that we use when we're writing. It's one way you can do it. Because I knew that it was going to be a risk that all of the heroines would feel very similar if I wasn't intentional and very, very careful. So I wanted to kind of do the work up front on that part so that they, one's the Amazon, one's more like the Hera taking care of everybody. So that's Caroline, who's the heroine in Lethal Intent. Hayden, I don't remember which one she is, but I just went through and I could pull out the book and I could show you it's still written in the book. Hayden's this character, and Emily was more this one, and Jamie was the Amazon who's going to fight for everybody. And so I went through and was really intentional to try and make them very different from the beginning because via their occupation and their age, they weren't going to be because they all went to school together. So they're the same age, they're all living in DC, they're all attorneys. So there's not a lot of differentiation there. But Jamie was a bit of a mystery to me. And this was a story that the publisher actually pulled forward. I thought this was going to be the last one in the series. And the publisher actually pulled it forward and said, no, we want this third. And I went, okay. Um, because it was going to be darker. I knew it was. And so I was like, how can I make it not heavy? Because I am committed to there is always hope, no matter how hard life is. And life is hard. It just is. There's always hope because God never leaves us or forsakes us. He is always there. Even if we turn our back on him, he is there. And so he can take anything and he can make it good. He promises that. And I have seen that. I've experienced that. I've walked through miscarriage. I have walked through health challenges, both myself and with my daughter. And so I have had these experiences. No, I have not walked through childhood sexual abuse. And so, I haven't walked through domestic violence. I haven't had to make the choice to send my child across a border on their own. But life has not been all roses and unicorns and rainbows. So I am committed to, and it's why I write fiction that comes from a Christian perspective, because I want there to be hope. I want there to be this promise that where God shows up, there is something more. And so I was like, okay, God, how's that going to work in this? And it came in the most unexpected, but yet it shouldn't have been. It came through The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it came through pets. So the hero is actually he actually is military. He's former military, because there's a lot of military in the DC area, Pentagon and things like that. And so he's tasked. He does a lot of work with former military, helping them acclimate to post-military life, because I thought that was really important. May have been inspired a little bit by oh shoot, I just forgot the guy's name, but the new Captain America. And he has a therapy dog, Aslan. Gotta love the name, right? But then Jamie has a cat, and I think I forget what her cat's name is. It's been years since I've written this book. But what's really fun is the pet's journey to friendship mirrors the journey of Jamie and Chandler. And it's so fun. And so you've got this little bit of lightness that comes into play through the cat and the dog. And Aslan is just this archetype that shows up. And I actually had a friend who's a writer who said she emailed me after she read Delayed Justice, and she was like, I did my master's thesis on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and you pulled a theme out of it that I hadn't seen. And it's like, that just gave me chills. I still get chills thinking about that, because there's something about that book. There are so many, I could just go on and on about that book. But it's not just forgiveness. It's not just, what Jesus did covers our sins. There's this concept of restoration. And if you've ever read the book or watched the movie, there's this scene where Aslan doesn't just talk with Edmund, he literally restores him and puts him back as a son in the family. And that's what God does with us. And so I wanted that aspect to come through. So in some ways, this is Delayed Justice is probably one of my most overtly Christian books, because it's addressing one of the darkest issues out there. And so where there is the most darkness, we need the most light. And so I think that's why it happened. I never intended for this to be a book where it's a coming to faith story. But as I was writing it, it was so clear that was exactly what Jamie's story was. And anything less than that would not have been honest to her journey. So I hope if you pick it up that you find it to be real and honest, but also hope-filled, because that was my heart